Welcome to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast with SK083. During this program, you will hear guest experts sharing their experiences, best practices, and market insights. We discuss investing in multifamily apartment complexes and how a busy professional can passively invest hassle-free in various opportunities. Your host, SK083, owns millions of dollars of assets and has done thousands of value-add projects over 20 years now. So listen in for insights. Here's your host, SK083.
Welcome to another edition of Premium Cashflow Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Mike Cowper from Rising Tide Investments. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk with you and your guests.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mike is a veteran investor. He has done, single family, multifamily. He's done flips, wholesales, renovations, and quite a resume for sure. So Mike, take a few minutes, and if you can, share with the listeners your background and, sort of different things around your company.
Yeah. So the way I started off, actually, I graduated in 2008, which was, if everyone remembers, an awful time to try and get a job. Sure. So I found myself basically getting into sales unwittingly, not really wanting to, but this only thing that was offering a job and the opportunity. And I found that I actually was pretty good at it, and I ended up liking it. I always had that kind of, that sleazy salesperson mentality in my back of my head that, this is something where people get taken advantage of. And I quickly learned that that is the case for some people, but the good, consistent salespeople that are around for a long, long time and make a lot of money, they're actually problem solvers. And I got good at that. I got good at getting people to open up, explain to me what they're trying to do, understanding their needs, and then tying that back to how whatever it was I was selling, I could solve their problem. So started off with copy machines, moved into tax and accounting information. I worked with Thomson Reuters. And I had a few different positions with them while I was there because I kept wanting to try and do new things with them in more pilot programs. So I learned how to do sales in person with copiers. I learned how to do sales over the phone by listening very well over the phone, and then eventually evolved into a hybrid model. Now, when I was at Thomson Reuters, I actually paid some local investors in RIA Group to mentor me. They kind of showed me the ropes on how to buy a passive income property, because ultimately, that's what my goal is. I want that mailbox money. I want the time and financial freedom so I can do what I want, when I want, with whoever it is I want. And it was back in 2014 that I bought my first rental. So I was basically handheld through that whole process. But then I got the bug. And that's when I bought 2 more properties within the next 6 months. Because I had a W-2 job. It was a little bit easier then. And at that time, you could still find deals. And not to say you can't now, but it was less challenging to find opportunities on the MLS.
Sure.
So that's how I bought my first house. I ended up getting recruited into pharmaceutical sales, where I was doing really well there. But during that time, I started recognizing it was a challenge to find homes on the MLS. So I couldn't get the deals that I wanted. I couldn't make the numbers work with what was going on. Competing with a homeowner is usually a challenge compared to competing with, talking directly to the seller. So I started exploring ways of how do I get directly in touch with them so I can go more off market and not pay as much money if possible. That's where really networking became a big part of my life. And I started really understanding that value because I started just reaching out to local people that I found their information on, Bigger Pockets, Facebook, wherever, meetup.com. And through that, I found my partner in wholesale. He was a flipper that was transitioning into wholesale because he found that, he hated dealing with certain things if you're flipping, like appraisers, mortgage contingencies, requests, all of this stuff that you don't have a lot of control over. I, using my scale skills, started working on the front end of the business. I was the one that would talk to the sellers. I would go out and see the house. I would evaluate the renovations necessary, and then I would negotiate a price that made sense. And then we would take that contract and go sell it to another investor if they had the bandwidth, because most investors don't necessarily have the skill set, time, desire, want, need to run a lead generation business. And that's really, if you get down to the bulk of it, and I know a lot of people talk about wholesaling, but really it's a sales and marketing company. And our widget is real estate. We're selling a piece of paper. and the rights to buy a house.
Right. I'm glad you're kind of distilling it down to that, sort of fundamental level there, and that's where I think your sales skills, kind of come into play. That's incredible. Now, Mike, what does the business look like? What are the different sort of arms of your company that currently are in operation today?
So we've had a few different variations of it. We kind of fell into the trap, and maybe trap's the wrong word, but we fell into the idea that we had to scale like crazy.
Sure.
So we got our team really big. We had like 16 or 17 people on our team. We were in 3 states doing remote. And what we found was, or at least what I found was, I might be good at it, but I don't like to be a manager of people. I kind of expect everyone to have the same desire that I do, the same effort, the ability to learn quickly and adapt. And I found I didn't love trying to, coach people and track numbers and listen to calls. So we ended up scaling back down, and we were trying to run a pretty lean team right now. And fortunately enough, with COVID, we happened to have done that right before all of the shutdown took place. So we got out of our lease at our office space. We, let the people on our team go, just letting them know, hey, we're going small. We're not going to do the same volume we historically have done, because our goal is to keep more of the money. So the basic divisions of our company in the wholesale side is you have an intake person, like a lead intake. Someone's going to introduce themselves or talk to that person as the first point of contact when they reach out to us or we connect with them about a house that they might be interested in selling. Then we have an acquisitions department where we either do it over the phone more recently because of the social distancing and things like that. But historically speaking, we'd go out there, we'd do a visual inspection of the house, try to understand why they would be willing to sell to us at a discount, and try to provide them that solution of, hey, look, yes, we won't pay the most money on the planet, but we can solve problem A, B, and C, right? Maybe they have to have it sold in 2 weeks. Maybe they can't do the money to repair. Maybe they don't want people, like one person sold the house because they had a challenged child that they didn't want people coming in and out of their house for. So there's a lot of different reasons why people would sell for a discount, but that's the acquisitions role, is to negotiate a purchase price for our company to either buy it as a rental, as a flip, or as a wholesale. The next part of our business is dispositions. So that is our back end investor. So if you're looking at it from the sales perspective, the front end acquisitions is more of a business to consumer type of sale, where the disposition is more business to business, because he is talking only with other investors who don't care what color the house is because they're going to change it. They don't care what it looks like other than their rehab budget, their profit potential, or their cash flow. So he's in charge of handling closings, making sure we're working with the title company, and selling those contracts to the other investors. And then we also have a little bit of a project manager for the miscellaneous work we do in terms of rental rehabs or flips.
Interesting. Now, talking about the lead generation, Mike, what are some of the things that you guys do, whether it is, I guess, direct mail, emails, Facebook, all of that? Like, what are the different channels you're using to generate all these leads and, kind of go after different distressed sellers?
Really, it's all of the above. But what I've found is over my time that different strategies work better at different times. So we haven't sent out mail probably since the beginning of the year, because people are locked in their house. They were careful about what they wanted to sell. Here in Michigan, we had a complete lockdown. Real estate was deemed a non-essential activity. So we didn't want to spend the money just to spend the money.
Makes sense. Right.
Some of the other channels we do use, like Google AdWords, pay-per-click style. So drive them to our website, pay a fee for every time they click through. Those tend to be better leads, but they're expensive at times. We do cold calling. We've done direct text messaging. We were doing ringless voicemail for a little while until it became real gray and probably not legal for the most part. I don't want to speak on that. I know there's a lot of different opinions on it. What I found with ringless was it was just more time intensive than you would think, because everyone and their brother calls you back, and then you have to filter through a lot of different things that are usually just people that are upset that you called them. Networking. I've had a lot of our buyers have actually worked with us on helping liquidate some of their properties, because they know we have a direct vein into other investors that are looking to buy, and they don't have to show it a bunch of times or put it on the market or pay, commissions and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, the big channels historically have been, your direct mail. Bandit signs have worked for us in the past. Again, we got in trouble with the code violation when we put 100 signs up in one night in one city. They didn't like us much then. And that's kind of a lot of my experiences. We go real big and try it really aggressively, and then scale back to the appropriate number. historically how it's done. And we found success with that for the most part, but it's also gotten us in trouble in the past by overdoing it in certain ways and spending more money and waiting too long to recognize that it's not a profitable channel, or that, who moved my cheese, right? The cheese is moved on us, and we've got to start looking at a different way.
Right. That's interesting. And that's interesting. Now, give us a sense of, Mike, that what is like a average deal look like? Meaning, a phone call comes in, like the whole process, and, if you can maybe share some price points on some of your sample deal, that'd be great.
Yeah. So really, it can vary from time to time. It feels like they typically fall into 3 buckets. One, they're super hot. They're ready to sell right now. First person that get it out there or get them to sign a contract is going to get it. So those are the ones that you have to drop what you're doing and make sure you're giving your time, energy, and effort to converting those.
Sure.
The next ones are warm. So they might be somebody that is wanting to sell, but maybe they're not realistic on their price point yet, or they haven't had enough pain yet. So these are people that we'll follow up with over time.
Sure.
And then the other ones are more of our cold leads. And those are ones that we'll follow up with them over time, but it's just spaced out more. And then we also partner with a few local agents and we refer them out, because, oftentimes people might say, hey, well, if I don't have to do any work and I get full retail value from a cash investor, then let me call them. So sometimes they're raising their hand a little bit early for what an agent would get to, and we can put that in front of them and they have the best opportunity to get that listing. Where I am a licensed agent, I don't list anybody's houses for them. You don't want me to list your house for you. I'm not good at it, but I use it mostly for the access to the MLS. Also, I can get the referral fees. There's different ways I think people work around that, marketing budget or whatever. But those are, I'd say, the 3 different ways. So if they come in, answer the call, try to understand what it is, why they're looking to sell.
Sure.
We're really interested in the motivation. Why us? Why an investor? Why not list it? A lot of people get scared about asking that question. But when you ask that question, everybody knows an agent or thought of an agent. Like, an investor's the last piece of their mind. If they're talking with us, they've already thought of that option. And for whatever reason, they don't think it's the best fit for them.
Sure.
Maybe they have unrealistic expectations, but asking that and understanding that question can give us opportunity to solve a problem.
Sure.
They don't want to do the work. They don't have the money. They've got to move fast. They don't want to have their house go under contract for 60 days and it fall out last second because the financing fell through.
Right.
So we try to understand that. Then we set up an appointment to come look at the house. That's where we actually bring a contract with us. If it makes sense, if it's a win-win, we'll sign the contract at an agreed upon price. And then we start marketing it to our buyers. So we have a large list of investor buyers that will check our emails, check their text message. They sign up and opt in to get notifications from us because our deals are vetted most specifically for investors. So checking the MLS every day, you might get an opportunity here and there, maybe. But with us, we're able to send out usually, 2 or 3 opportunities a week.
Wow, that's awesome. And also speaking of, sort of the capital side of the business, Mike, as we all know that real estate is a great medium for a lot of passive investors to kind of, invest and obviously be supported by a strong, asset like, let's say, a house and things like that. Can you maybe talk about how you are integrating passive investors in your business right now?
Absolutely. That's actually the lifeblood of my business. And you and I were talking about that a little bit before we hopped on, but really, I've never actually bought a house with my own money yet. I've been very fortunate in the position to have people that understood what I was good at and that I would be good at this from the early stages. So I got some of that initial investment from family and friends to buy my first rental. I was then able to refinance it using my W-2 job. But now that I'm no longer in a W-2 job, I do really work on building up relationships. I have a lot of private partners, lending partners that are, they're tired of playing the stock market game. Because while it does consistently go up over time, if you're retiring in 3 to 5 to 10 years and it has a crash, then you're out. Like, yes, it's nice and cute that 8% over the annualized return of the entire time. Yes, it's there. But when you're ready to cash out, if your stock portfolio isn't looking great, there's no consistency. So I get a lot of my funding from family, friends, and then them recommending me to other people because just like you said, if I don't make a payment to them, they could take a house back that I've already updated, put a tenant in place, and have it property managed for me. And it's a basically hands-off thing. So the only reason I wouldn't pay them is if I'm a jerk or for some reason or another, there is something that's wrong with the house. But I don't see how that would be possible if I'm doing my job.
Right.
And that's why I protect them. And I never put them in more than 70% of their value.
Sure.
But it allows them to get a more consistent return on their money because I pay out every month. So they get a monthly payment and it's actual money they can use. Now, if you're using a self-directed IRA or some kind of one of those passive income, tools,
sure,
not passive retirement tools, you might not be able to get it right away, but you can accelerate the growth of your portfolio that way sometimes. So a lot of people are looking for that consistency and somewhat of that safety, right? All investing, there is risk. Don't get me wrong,
sure.
But I see this as safe as you can get in an investment because I'm protecting their equity position on the property. I am doing all the work up front. I have the team and resources and knowledge to make sure it's producing properly. And if a company goes belly up and you're invested in their stock, you get nothing. If for some reason or other I can't make a payment to you, I will walk the deed to your house. Like, I'm not here to try and play games with anybody. Like I've never missed a payment in my life, but that's the credibility that you want as a lender too.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Now, for a sample of passive investors that you have in your deal, can you maybe walk us through in terms of, what that process looks like, whether, you're marketing or whatever, and let's say, someone reaches out, let's say they are into your deal. Can you maybe kind of walk us through, how does that returns, and plus also when they get their money back and things like that, what does that look like?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about private lending and working with me and people like yourself. It's all customizable. It's based on what they want. So I have certain people that I have basically interest only loans on the property and they want to be cashed out in 3 years. That gives me enough time to either refinance it, put together a commercial package and have them, bundled together. And really what I do is I try to understand the goals of my partners. So historically speaking, what happens mostly is a lot of them are just enjoying the interest only. So that allows me to cash flow more and then use that time to build up the seasoning, depending on what your bank's requirement, your credit union requirements might be, and allows me to get that seasoning in place, then refinance them out. Sometimes if I want to, I can pull equity out of the properties. We've improved the value of most of the homes that I buy. So there's more money there available, cash them out, possibly bring some more money in to help keep funding the marketing channels. But I'm super flexible on that. Ideally, perfect world, a 30-year, 3% interest like a conventional mortgage would be awesome. But not everyone wants to invest that long. And that's why I'll throw a balloon on there if they want it. And if people aren't familiar with what a balloon is, it basically means that at a set period of time, you have to pay the remaining balance of that loan.
Right.
So I really try to set up, and it goes back to almost when I'm buying houses. I need to understand their goals and I need to understand what they want. And then if an opportunity arises that fits their goals and the numbers work where that investment can work for the deal, them and me, that's where I pull the trigger on it with that particular lender. And I just kind of know who wants what and how they want to invest. And that way I can present the right opportunities to the right people at the right times.
Sure. Thank you for that clarification, Mike. So it's safe to say that depending on what the goals of the passive investors are, they could be anywhere between 1 to 2 to 3 years, depending on the project. Would that be a correct statement?
Correct. Now, usually I do like to try and get at least a 2 to 3 year commitment on it, right? If something happens and you need your money back, I'll do everything in my power to get it back to you. But as you know, right, in passive investment, if there's a market correction, we care about the cash flow. We don't care about the value. To a degree, we care about the value, but we're looking at what is the money spitting off every month. So as long as it can sustain it through a down and an uptick again, that's why I try to get a longer term if possible. But I have enough of a network and, anybody that's interested, happy to talk with them. But the thing is, I have enough of a network that I could probably replace those funds relatively quickly if necessary, right? Not going to happen tomorrow overnight, but the goal is always to try and make everyone whole when necessary, but that's part of the reason why you have an agreement too, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like if people don't communicate enough or over disclose, that's where you can get in trouble. So that's why I spend so much time trying to understand what their goals are, what could happen, and let them know, look, if you need it back, I'll try, but I can't promise anything. That's why we have this contract in place, so I can take other people's money or your money somewhere else, if you have extra, to invest in other properties and projects.
Sure. Now let's talk about some price points, Mike. Like what a typical deal looks like in your market. Like how much is the purchase, and perhaps what sort of wholesale fees you are getting, and then what are some of the time frames also around some of the wholesaling?
So Michigan is a somewhat unique market. We don't have the highest price points on the planet,
Sure.
or the country, obviously. But really, what I've been finding is we tend to have two status brackets and then a third bracket that I'm getting good at utilizing, but not many people do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the rental market.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Here in Michigan, we have incredibly high property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
For like a $50,000-$60,000 house, you're looking at $2,000 or $3,000 a year,
wow,
which is
mm-hmm.
high.
Right.
Then we also have a lot of cities that when the last crash took place, they decided to turn landlording into a profit stream. So they have continual and regular inspections for rental certificates. Mm-hmm. And that can be once a year, once every 2 years, once every 3 years. I think that's the longest one that's out there. But basically every time they come in, they just keep tagging you for reinspection fees. Mm-hmm. So that's the lower market, the rental market. Most mm-hmm. investors here don't want to be all in for more than $70,000 just because of those circumstances. With $3,000 in property taxes, if you're paying about $100 a month in property management, mm-hmm. still cash flowing, but it gets squeezed. And then our insurance rates are, I don't know if they're high or low or not, but I mean, you got to budget, $50 to $100 a month on that as well.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's really where the price points I try to be at for my passive income stream. Mm-hmm. Second, and on those, we also assign a lot of those through wholesale. Sure. Then the other bracket is more of your flip market. For mm-hmm. us, where we found the most success in that is usually in that $100,000 to $200,000 price point mm-hmm. that can sell up to $250,000. That's usually where we're finding the most flipping market, because anything less, you're not going to make the returns you want for the risk. So a lot of our flippers want to make, somewhere between 15 or 20% of ARV after all of your expenses, your acquisitions, your holding, your rehab costs. So that's the second bucket. And out of those two buckets, we average approximately, $12,000 in assignment fee. So mm-hmm. each deal, we get that. And we're spending about, say, $2,000 to $4,000 per deal cost in terms of marketing, employees, overhead, things like that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, the third bucket that I'm actually really intrigued with lately is the creative space. So that mm-hmm. space between that $60,000 and $100,000, if you can buy it and then sell it on seller finance via a land contract or another state's contract for deed, mm-hmm. now I can start charging 9, 10, 11% interest on these homes. They don't have to be as renovated as a flip, because these are the people that need a non-traditional type of lending to qualify. Now, I still follow a process, a background check. I use a qualification company that makes sure that their income supports it. But maybe they had a bankruptcy. Maybe they had a medical bill that, got them out of whack and they don't quite qualify for, right now, last I heard it was 700 credit score for Chase. So offering that up, I can turn that into a cash flow stream. So now I'm getting a down payment up front. I'm mm-hmm. making money on the interest each month. And mm-hmm. then whenever it is they cash me out, if they do cash me out, I'm making a profit on that because I'm using the amortization schedule that banks use anyway. Mm-hmm. So now I've found a way to make that in between no man's land into a profit center.
Nice. Now, I want to ask a related question there, Mike, is that a lot of times I've heard that a lot of investors have pivoted into what's called I think it's like a hoteling, meaning, you're not just like completely wholesaling as is. Maybe you do some minor cleanup and spruce up and, like maybe a quick paint job or something. Have you tried that, or what are your thoughts on some of that?
So it's actually a really great model. The thing is, I detest flipping. I've gotten burnt a few times trying to flip houses, me and my mm-hmm. partner, and I don't like it. I don't like the whole process. I don't like managing contractors. It's something that's not in me to do long-term, but wholesaling actually is a really great strategy. Funny enough, we had a buyer back out last week before the 4th, and he just backed out. So we ended up buying it, mm-hmm. and we're going to put it on the MLS doing nothing to it, because it's in a community that people really desire. It has 2 kitchens. So a lot of the times that people live there, they have multiple families that live together. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be quite attractive. It's going to end up working out for us. But in the original phase, I like to take as least amount of risk as I can to get the most return. But on this one, we even try to get a new buyer on it because we had some backup offers. We're like, all right, well, we have to buy it tomorrow. This guy just backed out. So, we just funded it real quick, had to scramble the jets a little bit to get the financing and all that stuff, put in the right spot.
Sure.
But we're just going to put it on the MLS. The owner has a 14-day occupancy period. So on the 15th, they will be out, and this will be on the MLS, and we're going to do the wholesale strategy.
I see. Nice.
So what I would caution people on a little bit with that, though, is it goes back to flipping. Is if you can't sell it the way you expect, and with the whole uncertainty in the market right now with, COVID, how's that going to impact pricing? How's it going to impact people's jobs? I'm worried about a little bit of a correction coming. I mean, it feels like it's been building for quite some time since our last recession. Mm-hmm. This might be the thing that pushes it over. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know. But wholesaling has been a good strategy, because if you can't make it numbers work necessarily for a flip, or you can't make it as an assignment through a wholesale deal, there might be opportunity there, right? You're selling it at a discount to a homeowner, but it's got to be able to pass inspections. So that's where some of the trickiness comes up. And I always say to people, if you're going to wholesale, be ready to flip it if you have to. Because if it doesn't sell, and it doesn't sell quickly, everybody seems to know, if you have a house on the market for an X amount of period of time and it seems weird, everyone starts going, well, why is it on the market? What's wrong with it?
Right. There must be something wrong with it, right?
Exactly. So I do like the wholesale model. We've made good money on that. A lot of people have made good money on it, but you really got to look at the stuff that's going to miss an inspection, right? Is there cracked concrete? At least here in Michigan, I can only speak for that. Like, is there cracked concrete? Is the electric bad? Is the, if there's minimal stuff, like you said, carpet, paint, like, easy peasy, that can be done in a weekend.
Right.
But if you're changing out cabinets, restructuring, reframing, whatever, like, you want it to be like, the way I look at it is it's grandma's house, right?
I see. Mm-hmm.
It's old, it's dated, but it's well maintained, it's well kept up. It's just not the brand new everything.
Right. Awesome. Now, share with our listeners, Mike, like, what is some of the best advice you have received so far in the business, like whether it was veteran investors or fellow colleagues that perhaps you have recently heard from? Can you maybe share with the young listeners what are some of the best pieces of advice you have gotten in the sort of the investing game so far?
This is something that hasn't necessarily been told to me, but I've been learning it. Don't chase the shiny objects. Mm-hmm. There is a reason that things are new. And sometimes you can be the early adopter and buy into Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. But there also is about a million other things that you could have bought into that went to zero.
Sure.
So some of those things, like, I've done it. And the reason it's coming from experience is I've tried to be an early adopter in a lot of different opportunities, right? Getting on Facebook marketing, the ring list, like hiring like crazy, trying to scale. Like, so I've done a lot of that stuff. What I would recommend, and probably the best piece of advice I've ever gotten, is making sure you understand what your goal is. Sure. And if you have something that comes into your lane, is it something that helps you get to your goal, or is it a nice to have, not a need to have? Because this business, that's the beauty and the downfall of real estate investing, is there are so many different ways to do it.
Sure.
So understanding what your goal is, right? Mine is time and financial freedom. That's why I took the time to learn the creative space, because that's adding to my cash flow. Absolutely. But when I was chasing down trying to flip a house, realizing I hate it, because I don't like doing that. I don't want to have to manage a bunch of contractors all the time. I don't want to manage a bunch of people all the time. So understanding what the end goal is, and then if there is a shiny object, is it going to get you close to your goal, or is it like a cash grab? Because if it's a cash grab, this is a long-term game. Like, I've been sprinting for long enough that I recognize that you can't sprint forever, and you have to make strategic choices about what it is you're trying to do with your investing strategy, whether it be you're a lender, you're a passive income, a wholesaler. There's ways to tie it all together, but you've got to know what is the priority. If you have to pick between task 1, 2, and 3, which one's going to get your attention?
Right. Awesome. And one last related question, now that you brought up all the management of the business and stuff, Mike, that goes on, are you using mostly like assistants in your office, or do you have any like virtual assistants integrated in your business?
Yeah. So back to the point earlier, we scaled down right before the whole pandemic. And right now I have a sales assistant, VA. She actually grew up in South Carolina, but lives in Costa Rica now. She is a little more expensive than the Filipino VAs, but she also has impeccable English. She has a very good profile for sales. So I'm trying to groom her into taking over my position in the conversations. I found that my unique ability is to talk with people in sales. So I still have myself in that role in our business because I like it. But she helps narrow down the amount of work I have to do by qualifying them. And then I listen to her calls, and we had training actually this morning. We do it once a week for like 3-4 hours. And we really just kind of dig into calls. We have her listen to me on calls. I listen to her on calls. So I have one assistant. I'm running the acquisitions. We have a dispositions manager, and he is local. He's actually been with us from the beginning. Funny enough, he came from my company at Thomson Reuters. Back then, I didn't really know him at the time, but he's a soldier. He is. I love the guy. He will die for us. I mean, that's the thing. We're in the war together. And then my partner, who does most of the project management. So we've got a team of 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 4 people. And then we also have a bookkeeper, because none of us, I mean, my partner and I were visionaries. If you read tracks or anything like that, we're not great at details. And basically just being able to text a receipt to my bookkeeper, or I think they're using Receipt Bank now. Just be able to text it to him and say, hey, this is what it's for, and then never have to think about it again is wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you for your great advice, Mike. I appreciate it. Please share with the listeners how they can find you and learn more about your company.
Yeah, well, you can find me on any of the social media. I'm at the Mike Cowper. That's COWP as in Paul, ER. And we do have a mastermind for experienced investors. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to beinthisroom.com. We're intentionally trying to keep it small, just to kind of build that community and network. And it's really focused on building a better business. That's why we've got a lot of spokes in the wheel of real estate. And making sure people have an identified goal, but then using all of their resources to capitalize on the most opportunity possible while staying on your lane. So we're really focused on that. And if you want to send me an email, I'm Mike.Cowper, COWPER @WeBuyROI.com. Feel free to shoot me an email. And if you're interested in buying a house from us as a wholesale deal, you can go to WeBuyROI.com, or if you feel like you want to lend here in Michigan, let me know.
Great. Thank you for all your insights, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at premiumcashflow.com to sign up for weekly updates, research articles, and more. We will see you again for another great interview with an expert guest.